Welcome to Bat Lessons. I'm Alex.
And I'm Brian.
Brian, what do you know about Zur-En-Arrh?
Zero, nothing
Okay.
at all.
Do you know the iceberg meme?
Maybe.
Have you seen this picture before?
I have seen this picture before,
Okay.
but I don't know if I know like the canonical meme reference to it.
Yeah, so there's the meme template where basically you take like fandom XYZ, right?
Yeah.
Fill in the blank. And you have stuff that like every fan knows is at the very tippy top of the iceberg. And the further down you go, the more like esoteric or obscure it gets. But also like ideally cool and interesting, right? Like you wouldn't choose like random stuff no one cares about.
Cool. That's why they chose an iceberg. Got it.
Exactly.
Got it.
Like there's so much more beneath the surface, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a way to it's in group out group, right? Like how far down the iceberg do you go, right? And it's flexing about like how much of a nerd you are, right?
Yeah.
I'm so excited to talk about the Silver Age because there's so much Batman that people like to forget. It is like intentionally marginalized. The Golden Age has this patina on it, right? Where people revere it in a way. Like they know a lot of it's kind of stupid, but they also know that if it didn't happen, they wouldn't have Batman that they have today, right? So they travel down the Batman Iceberg, and I'm guilty of this. Like we on this show started at the tip of the iceberg, and we're traveling down, right?
Yeah.
Further and further beneath the surface. People love to talk about the fact that Batman used to use guns, right? That's like the one that's just beneath the surface of the water, right?
Oh yeah.
It's incongruous with today. You know, the novice Batman fan who's only like watched a cartoon or played Arkham or watched a couple movies doesn't know about it. So it's a surprise to every single Batman fan, right? There's all kinds of like every comic creator who has a TikTok, who has a YouTube, has a podcast, does a thing about it. One of the best performing TikToks we have is this it's a boring clip. It's an awful clip of us just like talking about it in a totally uninsightful way, but it's got the art of Batman holding the gun. So it just pops off, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing as people travel down the iceberg. Another one that's maybe a little bit further down is the Bill Finger, Bob Kane credit dispute, right? It's interesting. It has to do with the creation, right? I being stupid thought when we made this podcast we were going to be like bringing this news to a lot of people. That's not the case. Like if you're a Batman fan, you know this thing, right? Like they've made movies about it, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to think that we're adding to the iceberg in some ways. Like we're doing a lot of the things that everyone talks about. Like if you go and you watch, you know, a random creator on YouTube, or you listen to a random podcast, a lot of them like they're just doing the stuff on Wikipedia. I when we compare the Penguin to FDR, I feel like that's somewhat novel. When we're talking about Jeeves and Wooster and comparing that to Alfred, I feel like that's somewhat novel, right? So a lot of that stuff, in the Silver Age is a little bit further down the iceberg. Golden Age fallen by the wayside, erased by reboots or disinterest, but people still like it. Silver Age, less love in the current moment. Doesn't have the reverence, doesn't have the patina. People see it as silly or less important or less foundational, right? So we're going that one step further down the iceberg.
Can I ask some more iceberg questions?
Yes.
Okay, so I am familiar with metaphor of the iceberg, that like most of it's under the water. Now I'm kind of curious. I'm rethinking my metaphors.
Sure.
Does deep cut have anything to do with an iceberg, or
No,
is
I don't
that
think so.
records? I always thought it was records.
Yeah, I think that's a record thing. Because like they're cutting the groove into the vinyl, I think.
Yeah, well, so that's we might have to cut this or something, but that metaphor has always confused me because deep cut means played a lot, I thought, but usually the metaphor.
I don't think that's what that means.
That's not what that means? I always thought it meant like you played it so often that it was like deeper, cutting deeper into the record or something.
Like you had to dive deeper into the library to go get it. Let's Google it. Deep cut.
Oh, okay.
A piece of music or singer group that little known in comparison to their other music, right? Deep cut would be something that people don't know, right?
Right. That's what but the metaphor, my understanding of the metaphor doesn't match the meaning of the phrase.
A cut is a slang for a song on a track where it comes from the groove in the record. It's deep because it typically might appear deep within the album instead of at the beginning.
Oh, deep in the album. Okay. All right.
As people have less reverence for it, they're less likely to know about it. They're less likely to return back to it. There are certain things that we're going to cover in the Silver Age, including ones we already have, like Ace the Bat Hound, right? That sticks around. They have a sort of steady drumbeat. Like they're were multiple stories at the time that were popular and liked about Ace the Bat Hound. Writers in the preceding years call back to it. And so Ace the Bat Hound never really disappears, but there's a ton of stuff that completely disappears. No one ever bothered to follow it up. This is not a thread. You wouldn't even consider it part of the lore. It is like, a one-off issue that is basically irrelevant to the Batman lore. Enter Grant Morrison. Do you know who Grant Morrison is?
I know Grant Morrison's name. I don't think I've ever seen his picture.
Okay.
Which, this is an epic picture.
Yeah, he's like making a pen float. He's got his other hand beneath it.
This is very Lex Luthor. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a bald king like me. A quick note on pronouns, actually. Since I've said he. Morrison has said that they've come to prefer they them.
I see. Mind. Okay.
He him. He has a quote where he says, "If I said I'd been doing now what I was doing back in the 1990s, I would be viewed as non-binary or genderqueer. Suddenly, it was taken up by the fan press, and I was awarded the label they them. I never asked for it. It came from a generation where that doesn't matter. Even being labeled at all is anathema to me. I can't live in a box. I'm going to let down anyone who sticks the label on me. I'll drop off quite naturally. So I'll slip back and forth between he, him, they, them. Force of habit." He's only started in the last few years to start going by that, and so but has been writing forever. So
sure,
apologies in advance.
I really like that little clip because I too really hate labels.
Oh
and
yeah,
I just one of the biggest, most frustrating things for me is like I'm an individual. I'm not a this or a that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No,
totally.
I'm not one for tradition at all. But also I have like deep neural pathways where. Because I've spoken a certain way.
So hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so Grant Morrison, super famous. The fact that you know his name, not super surprising. Very well-known comics writer, hugely prolific. In the mid-'80s, Morrison writes in a famous British comics magazine called 2000 AD. I don't know. Have you ever heard of 2000 AD?
Mm-mm.
That's where Judge Dredd comes from. I don't know if you know the Judge Dredd movie.
Yeah, I know Dredd. Yeah.
Came from comics. It's a British comic magazine, right? And he's Scottish. In the late 80s, they start writing for DC. At that time, there's a big British influx. They call it the British Invasion, happening where a ton of writers are coming over. Neil Gaiman, Alan Moore, Grant Morrison is part of this, right? Morrison does a run on some lesser-known characters and teams. Animal Man raises the prominence of that character. Doom Patrol raises the prominence of that team in a big way. And in 1989, after some of the success of these lesser-known characters, they give him a standalone graphic novel called Arkham Asylum: A Serious House on a Serious Earth, which is critically acclaimed. Very likely raises the prominence of Arkham to being like a titular part of Batman things. I don't think people were doing that before. And in the 90s, they revamped the Justice League as the JLA. So if you ever heard the Justice League called the JLA, that's Grant Morrison's book. That's the era where Superman has a mullet. Batman is wearing all black with a yellow logo to match the movies, right? He's doing the Val Kilmer, right? Everyone's ripped as hell. Very 90s. The idea that you might be familiar with from when Morrison writes JLA is from a story called Tower of Babel, which is the idea that Batman has a contingency plan for all of the members of the Justice League.
Yes.
That's Grant Morrison.
This.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
And like now that idea is like played out. Like everyone's done a version of it. Grant Morrison's kind of the first one to do that in a big way. In 2001, he takes over for the X-Men and revamps it in a similar way he did to JLA. They renamed the book The New X-Men. This is easily one of my favorite comic runs of all time. It's amazing. Fantastic. Art by Frank Quitely. If you saw Deadpool and Wolverine, the villain...
I have not, actually.
Okay. Suffice to say, the villain of that movie is someone that he created for New X-Men.
You can spoil it. I've seen so many like rando clips. Like I know all about. I don't know the storyline, but I know like all of the random people from all of his other movies that popped in. And stuff. Yeah.
I mean, I will say the villain is not like a particularly important part of the film. It's a romp. It's an adventure. It's more about the interplay between Deadpool and Wolverine. But the villain, such as there is one, is a character called Cassandra Nova, who's the twin of Professor X. It was Charles Xavier's like estranged, long lost twin, and that's Grant Morrison's character for New X-Men.
Cool.
In 2006, Grant Morrison takes over the main Batman book, starting with issue number 655. And the central conceit of that Morrison has is that there's all these parts of the Batman mythos and history that have been swept aside, rebooted, forgotten, that he's like, what if you incorporated it all, right? So there's this idea that there's the Batman of Earth 1, there's the Batman of Earth 2, there's the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they're all these sort of like separate parts of the canon. And he's like, what if that was all one dude? You know, what if in his 20s he was, you know, fighting vampires? And what if in his mid 20s, like he gets Robin, and then in his late 20s, it's like psychedelic and silly and crazy. And then, you know, in his 30s, he's doing, you know, Frank Miller year one, right? He's trying to make it all one person. Yeah. How can you make it all make sense? So he reintroduces a ton of ideas that have fallen by the wayside. And he does it through something called the Black Casebook, which of course Morrison likes to make things complicated and abstract and have, you know, triple meanings and things. There are sort of three high-level conceptions of what the Black Casebook is. Okay. So in Grant Morrison's first issue of Batman 655, there's the in current continuity Black Casebook, which the idea is that it's a book full of unsolved mysteries.
Oh, it's the X-Files.
It's Batman's X-Files. It's like all the stuff he never was able to figure out. He can't explain it, right? That's his Black Casebook. Okay. In Detective Comics number 148 in June of 1949, written by Bill Finger and drawn by Dick Sprang, there is a casebook. They don't call it the Black Casebook, right? Where in one story, you see it bookends at the beginning. Batman's writing down the things that are happening. And at the end, he's writing it down like he's a detective because it's Detective Comics, right? Very obviously not the same thing, but like Grant Morrison's like, this is the first appearance of the Black Casebook, right?
That's funny.
It is funny. And then there's the third version of the Black Casebook, which is a trade paperback.
Oh, cool.
From 2008, where it publishes a bunch of the stories that inspire the Grant Morrison run of Batman. And there's a lot of these deep cuts where there's not a steady drumbeat. So like Ace the Bat Hound, there's stories throughout. We're going to do an episode on Batmite soon, right? There are Batmite stories every few years. Every writer has a soft spot in the heart for this crazy, silly thing from the Silver Age that they love to write back to. Grant Morrison is calling back to stuff that had a single issue and was never followed up. It was like dead, forgotten, buried from, you know, 1950 whatever until 2006. There's not a mention. There's a 50-year gap of prominence, right? In these like threads that he's pulling. So he's putting things back on the iceberg, right? He's going to these ideas that never took off. He's referencing them again, and then all of a sudden, they're an important part of the pantheon. Batman of Zur-En-Arrh is one of those things. So there's this single issue. I made you read it.
Yes, I read it. I actually, there's 3 stories in that issue.
Yes.
It's the third story.
It is, yes.
I read through the first one, and I was like, this is really interesting. I guess we're going for some like real deep cut origin stories for villains.
I didn't even read the first story in that.
And then there's another one where it's like a clown that is like dressed like a pig, but is called Fat Man.
Yeah, Fat Man. I did read that one because how could you not? You're flipping through the issue, and all of a sudden there's this really fat dude in a Batman costume, and you're like, I gotta read this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's not what
and then
covering.
So I finished that one, and I was like, which one did Alex want me to read? And then I went and I looked back, and you referenced one that I did not read. So I kept turning the pages, and I found it, and I read it. So yeah, I read 3 today. Congratulations.
So Batman number 113, February of 1958 is the cover date. Written by a guy named Francis Heron, who is not known for writing Batman. He's written like, 3 or 4 issues, and this is probably the only one we're ever going to talk about. So real talk, we're probably never going to come back to him. I believe he's like a Green Lantern writer or something like that. It's only like he did do a lot of comics writing, but not for Batman.
That would kind of make sense.
And then the art is by Dick Sprang, who this is I think the first issue we're covering by Dick Sprang. Probably one of the most important Batman artists of all time. I didn't have time to prep for it today. We will come back. We will talk about Dick Sprang.
The style is like very, very Silver Age.
Yes, we are.
It's very extremely Silver Age.
We're here. We've arrived. We're in the thick of it.
This artist who does a lot of that stuff, or is he just like one of many? So
Shelley Moldoff is also super active at this time.
Oh, that's right.
But like, I think Dick Sprang is, if you ask someone to choose one that you would associate with the Silver Age, they'd probably choose Dick Sprang. In fact, I think like when we had the Penguin episode and Sal was on, right? Dick Sprang was the artist that he called out as like peak. He associated with the Golden Age, but it's a Silver Age artist. But like, if you think of classic Batman, smiling eyes, fists on the hips, they're thinking of Dick Sprang.
Got it. Yeah, I think of like, I don't know, shape
Uh-huh.
and like the lines. Reminds me a lot of like if Johnny Bravo was Batman.
Sure. Yeah. I think calling back Johnny Bravo in a way is calling back to the 50s
Oh
for sure.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm sure. Yeah.
So it's interesting. Did you catch that the cover of this story is calling out to this story? You said there was 3 Batman stories. You didn't even
Nope.
read the yeah. So this is the Batman, Superman, and Planet X is the story we're reading today. And on the cover, it's like very, we're late 50s here, 1958. But like you're seeing the 60s color palette like emerging already for sure.
Oh
Um,
heck yeah. These neon colors.
exactly, yeah. And he's fighting some aliens, and he's flying like Superman.
Yes, very interesting to see him flying like Superman. Like one of the very first things I thought of was that episode we did where we talked about Superboy
Yeah.
meeting young Bruce Wayne
Oh, sure, yeah.
and all of that kind of craziness.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is I tried to do a little bit of research about like what it inspired Zur-En-Arrh, and we'll talk a little bit about the sort of the cultural moment after. But in terms
Yeah.
of like character inspiration or like similar story inspiration, it's like it's Freaky Friday, it's X meets Y, right? Like,
Sure.
are you familiar with the idea of the like it's Tony Hawk, but it's also a third person shooter, and like that's how you get Roller Drome. It's like you take one
Oh, yeah,
game
sure.
and another game and you
Yeah.
put it together.
Yeah.
This is like Batman, but what if he's Superman, right? That's the whole, there is no deeper thoughtfulness about what they're trying to do. It's just
Yeah.
like, what if Batman was Superman?
They took the bat from Batman and the man from Superman, and they got Batman.
They made
It
Batman.
makes sense. It
Yes.
adds up.
Title page, we've got, Batman like fighting this big mech thing, which I think is pretty cool. The gist of the story is super weird. Batman feels compelled to go fly in his bat plane, and his internal monologue is like, I don't know why I'm doing this.
Yeah. I was super confused.
Yeah.
Because I thought he was like in a dream or something, because he was like, because like the coloring and stuff, he's like looking at Dick Grayson and he's like, oh, strange. Usually I go flying or I go out at night with Dick, and almost like, what is wrong? What's wrong with Dick? Or something like that. And and the angles are so tilted. I was thinking of whatever that cinematography thing
The
is.
Dutch angle, yeah.
The Dutch
tilt
angle
or
where
whatever it
things
is,
aren't
yeah.
right. And I was like, what in the heck is going on? Is all of this going to be a dream or something?
Yeah. Well, I think if you were a writer in 2006 and you're going back and trying to make this make sense, what is the angle you would take, right? Maybe it is a dream. Clearly,
Oh,
that's
sure.
not the way they're trying to play it here in the 50s.
Right.
But he has like, I don't know, an event, like a psychotic. he has a,
It's a break.
he's going through something. He's got his hands on his face. He's in distress, like, oh, and there's like things radiating out from him. It's like a a sci-fi moment, a psychedelic moment,
Yeah.
for sure. Which is like 100% Grant Morrison's stuff, by the way. Like he's known for like doing shrooms and like went to Nepal to like have a.
Is that where the
religious
color
experience and
palette
stuff.
came from?
I guess, yeah. Well, this is this. Yeah, I guess. I think that's why Grant Morrison like takes to this, right? Is because it's bizarre and crazy, and that's his speed. And all of a sudden, he's in a cave, right? And there's this dude in this getup. What are your thoughts on this costume?
It's Batman if Batman, I mean, the colors are shifted, so it's
Sure.
like a red Batman.
Yeah.
And the way the cape flows, I don't know why, but it reminds me really strongly of Shredder's cape in the 90s, the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie.
Yeah.
And like how kind of like it's almost like if you've got those shoulder pads
Yep.
in your suit, right? Except it's like for a cape. Like it just flows up and then down.
Yeah. Well, he's got like cutoffs, right? Or a cutoff shirt,
Yes.
where like the sleeves are. So he's got yellow sleeves,
Yeah.
and then a red like tunic, and at the top of his cutoff, he's got these like I can't tell if they're supposed to be cloth or if they're supposed to be hard, but he's got these two like spikes coming off his shoulders
Yeah.
that do
The-
kind of
the
look like
way-
shoulder pads.
So the way that they're cut off, it
Yeah.
reminds me of like the fraying that you would see on like those cut off like jean jacket vests.
Yeah.
Like I can't think of his name. The guy who plays Ultron, that guy in the Goonies.
Okay.
It's
You're
like-
losing me, but I'm okay.
I know it's like reference within a reference.
Yeah.
But that's And now I have to think of that guy's name. So
In 10 minutes,
stay tuned.
I'm sure you'll think of it. I'll cut it back in.
It'll happen.
And it's like, yeah, I don't know, psychedelic. He's purple and yellow and red, which like not the color scheme I'd go to. And this guy says basically, hey, I'm an alien. I'm from outer space. My planet is called Zur-En-Arrh. Welcome to it. And I've been watching you on a telescope through space. He's been galaxy questing Batman, right?
Yeah.
I want to be like you, man. I think you're so cool. My name is, what is it? Talano?
Yeah, it's like Talano, something like that. I did think it was really funny that he said, I have a very powerful telescope and I've been watching you for a long time. And that has inspired me to be the Batman of my world.
Exactly, yes.
What kind of powerful telescope do you have that you can like see people running around and fighting crime and like be able to track like one person? It's that like,
it's kind of stupid.
But it's also like the vision of what technology was going to be in the 50s.
Sure.
Yeah.
To some degree, it's the vision of what we thought technology was going to be when I was a kid. Like, if you remember SETI, do you remember SETI?
Well, I mean, I know what SETI is. I don't know if I remember it from as a child. I watched Contact.
Sure. Well, so like I remember in like the late 90s, early 2000s, you could download a SETI client for your computer. You can probably still do it. I don't know. But like the idea was that this was the first example of distributed computing. So like before Bitcoin, before protein folding, there was SETI, and you were downloading basically like, waveforms. These were audio files that were captured of like radio static, basically. And it was running some sort of algorithm to like try to find patterns in it. So like, is this non-random? That's all it was. So you're looking at waveforms. Is it non-random?
Mm-hmm.
And, you could donate your computer's time and your electricity to like find. The idea was we would find transmissions, and we were going to figure out that there was extraterrestrial life. And there was going to be intelligence, because, we were going to listen to the radios because like that's what we do. We communicate via radio and we send it out into the universe. And like, so if someone else exists or existed a long time ago, the radio waves get here, it would be non-random, right? We don't even have to be able to decode it, right? But we could just tell that it's a signal, right? We did that for like, 30 years.
A long time, yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're mining Bitcoin.
Yeah, now we're mining Bitcoin. Also, as compute power increased, turns out like, no, it's all random. Like if they're communicating by radio, we haven't seen it yet.
Oh, yeah. I also think about like how incredible that that effort was in general, just like how like limited the computing power was, and to be like trying to find patterns in the chaos and stuff. Now we're much more capable of that because of computing power, but back then, like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so the idea that like at this time they thought they were, they were just one sort of like technological turn away from like being able to figure out there was intelligence life, was like super valid. And so to see it from the other angle makes total sense.
Yeah. Josh Brolin, by the way.
Thank you. Yes.
Steel Trap.
Josh Brolin, was he Ultron or was he?
Okay. Oh, not Ultron. That's my mistake.
Yes.
That's my mistake. Yes.
He's Thanos.
He's Thanos. Yes. You're totally right. No, Ultron is that older. I don't know his name at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know his voice.
That was my bad.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, he's in The Office, and he's in
yes.
Like
he was the
TV show with Shatner, Blacklist or Black
Boston Legal.
Yeah, Boston Legal. He's in Boston Legal.
I don't know how you got from Blacklist to Boston Legal.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
so he shows him around his Batcave, and it's like, I've got this crazy, sci-fi Batcave, and I've got a Batmobile, and it runs on an atomic engine. And I've got all this crazy technology, and Batman's like, wow, you're more advanced than us. And he gives him this gadget that he calls the Bat Radio, and explains that it's what he uses to fight crime. It's his gadget, right? That like emits electrons and like makes people, it's like an EMP, right? Like it stops the technology from working. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like jamming a signal.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Chekhov's Bat Radio.
Yes. Also, if you know, I hope at some point you tell me some of this, but like, where did any of these names come from?
What, Bat Radio?
Yeah.
Radia as in like radiation. So this is falling on the atomic age, right? And like he's just in the previous panel, literally the one before it, he's talking about how his car runs by an atomic engine, right? So it's
Yeah.
just like
Okay.
nuclear
I was wondering if it was like
technology.
that simple,
It
or
is,
if there was
yes.
like something that like rhymed with it,
No,
or like the Zur-En-Arrh. If you have any idea where that came from, I'm
So,
super curious.
so I'm trying to avoid talking too much about the new Zur-En-Arrh because because I'm not an expert on it, and
Okay.
B, like I think there's a whole episode in there in the future.
Okay.
There is suffice to say, there's a modern explanation for Zur-En-Arrh. At this time, there is not. It just
Okay.
sounds space agey.
Yeah, no, like I was curious if like again it's some reference to something,
No,
or like
I don't believe so.
made it sound like someone's initials, or I don't know, like
No,
like
I think it just sounds
yeah.
spacey. Same with Talano.
Yeah.
I think this is just schlock. This
Those
is
like Star Trekky names.
exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And then he explains, after he gives them the bat radio, the reason I brought you here is because our different environments, you're a superhuman here.
Yeah.
Which is the premise to Superman, right? Like,
Yes,
because
exactly.
of the red sun.
Yes.
Which like the red sun's the new thing. Back in the golden age, it was just like we had less gravity or whatever, so their muscles were stronger.
Yeah.
But which is also John Carter of Mars. Like that's where
Right.
they lifted it from Superman. But and so he like, hands him an iron bar or whatever, and is like, I couldn't possibly bend this, but you can. And Batman.
Oh
bends it, like,
yeah, he
super
says it's
easy.
like the strongest alloy known to their culture
Yeah.
or whatever. It's like, here, have some titanium, and Batman's like,
Yep,
and he totally,
exactly.
like, Hagrid's it, yeah.
And then we find out that Batman can fly.
Which is like quite a leap, right? Like,
Yeah.
to go from like I'm really strong to like fully defy gravity, like have not just strong, just like powers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, but like, I mean, it was a leap for Superman too, right?
Oh, for sure. It's
in early
just
comics,
like,
he doesn't, right? He leaps tall buildings because he's so strong and the gravity's so low.
but I just mean it's one panel later.
Sure. Yes. Yeah, totally. They've condensed what took years into 2 panels for sure.
Yeah.
And at that moment, the aliens show up.
Right in the nick of time. Like
Yeah,
he called him when he did.
Exactly. There's not much to it. They have these heat rays that they're using to like dry up the reservoirs of the planet, which doesn't make the most sense to me because if you're going to evaporate all the water, then the water goes in the atmosphere and like presumably it will saturate at a certain point, and like maybe they don't have rain on planet Zur-En-Arrh, but
I don't know, 50s science, like I don't know, like
and I don't know, there's these like stripy aliens with antennas. Oh, did we explain that the reason they brought Batman here is so that he can fight the aliens? Maybe I didn't explain that.
Oh yeah, I think we skipped that point.
Okay, because he's got superpowers, they bring him here because aliens. And Talano feels that he couldn't fight him on his own.
Is that the T?
Talano.
Talano. Okay.
Yeah. And Batman proceeds to fight them. They turn invisible. They shoot ray guns at him. It doesn't hurt him. He fights a bunch of them off while they're out of their mech suits. And he's like, oh man, I'm winning. Everything's great. And then they show up in a mech suit, which I had to Google, like, was this a thing prior to, like, when did Mecha show up? And the answer is, like, in the 1800s, late 1800s, there was, like, a steam mecha. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Certainly has taken off by this point in Japan big time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
There's, like, World War II propaganda about a mecha in Japan.
Yeah.
Astro Boy shows up in the early 50s, and he's, like, a robot boy. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, there's probably, like, some kind of Godzilla mecha around this point too as well.
Yeah, I don't know when Godzilla shows up, but it's post Godzilla for sure. Yeah.
Yes, post Atomic Age.
Yeah. And we're right in the pocket here. Like this is the very end of the Atomic Age, very start of the Space Age. And the big twist, right, is that Batman can't fight the mecha because they go invisible. He can't, figure out where they are.
Yeah. He can't be hurt by them either, which is kind of nice.
Yeah. Yes.
But because they're hitting him, poking and shoving him. He's like, I can't see where they're coming from. They're invisible. What do I do?
Yeah. Very clearly, this Francis Heron guy is like a much better like sci-fi writer than like Bill Finger could ever be. Whips out like the most, sci-fi jargon ever. Like this is like George Lucas class, like Gene Roddenberry class. This droid's missing a binary motivator or whatever.
Yeah.
To basically explain, MacGuffin the plot. Talano's like, oh snap! I think I understand what's happening with this invisibility thing. Remember that bat radio I gave you? And like they find out that the bat radio is able to use its electron particles to disrupt the invisibility. Yeah. So Batman can see them all.
Hooray!
Hooray! He goes and he gets this gigantic metal pole and he pulls it tight or whatever and turns it into a rope.
Yeah, he fully like Supermanifies all of this immediately. Where he's
lassos a bunch of the mechas up all at once and crashes them into the earth.
Yeah, he even makes some kind of he calls them like junkyard or junk. He makes some kind of joke about how they're all crashing into each other.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
It is, yeah.
Solano's like, thank you for saving us. It went exactly as I planned. And as a token of my gratitude, you can have the Bat Radio. And it can be a part of your trophy collection.
But he also says it won't work in your atmosphere, but it's a trophy.
Yes. This time, when he's having his psychotic break, he's happy instead of distressed. And all of a sudden, he's back in the airplane where he started.
Except he has this Bat Radio, which is kind of more like a Happy Meal toy.
It's got a little bat on the side. I don't know if you noticed that that's what's going on there.
I did notice that, but it's so itty bitty. He's just like, oh, I found my toy, yay!
It looks like one of those 3D printable fidgets.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's got like some knobs and switches on it, and and that's the first appearance of the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh. You know, not, if you hadn't heard everything that I just told you about Grant Morrison and the Black Casebook, would you think that this character is significant to the Batman mythos?
Significant? Not at all.
So, would you be surprised to know that this character is now significant to the Batman mythos?
I mean, yeah, I guess I'm a little surprised. Yeah.
Well, it is. So it's a very important part of the Grant Morrison run that goes starts in 2006, goes all the way to the New 52. I think it ends in like 2013 or something like that. Yeah, he leaves the Batman book, goes to a title called Batman Incorporated. So he's going parallel with Scott Snyder during the New 52.
Got it. It's very Scooby-Doo, Batman Incorporated.
Yes, Grant Morrison likes to be silly.
I dig it.
A little Scooby-Doo.
Mm-hmm.
Has since appeared in all kinds of stuff. It's been in Batman Brave and the Bold, the cartoon. It's been in a bunch of video games. Like Batman of Zur-En-Arrh was in a playable character in, I think, Lego Batman 3, in the DC Scribble Knots game. It was a skin you could unlock in Arkham Knight. Chip Zdarsky, who was the Batman writer up until like a month or two ago, the most recent Batman writer. The Batman of Zur-En-Arrh is a key part of his run on Batman as well. So 50 years, no Zur-En-Arrh. Grant Morrison brings it back, now firmly on the iceberg, right? This is a thing that now people are referencing back to. I will say his take on the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh, right? Like, it's not, these issues happened exactly the way they are, and you can read them like in a plain reading, and I'm just picking up like nothing ever happened. He's like recontextualizing, like, he's like, how could you make it work, right?
Yeah.
And so I will say the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh today has almost nothing to do with the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh in this book. He does have a Bat Radio, so that is a thing that sticks around. He does have the purple and yellow and red suit. But the central premise of the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh now is that it's like Winter Soldier, Manchurian Candidate, failsafe. The idea is that like Batman like brainwashes, hypnotizes himself to have an alternative personality that takes over and is Batman if he becomes compromised in some way.
What?
So like, have you seen the Manchurian Candidate? And I guess you've seen the Winter Soldier. They say the words and then all of a sudden he's programmed. He's a different person.
Yep. Very familiar with Manchurian Candidate.
So Batman has an internal persona, which is the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh, that comes out. That is the Manchurian Candidate to Batman when he's compromised in some way. So like if he were to try to be brainwashed, if he were to suffer some sort of like brain injury, if he were to, become not Batman for some reason in some sort of way, this mental programming takes over and he becomes the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh.
Or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I thought you were saying no, they're the same person.
I mean, it is in his body. Yes.
Okay.
There's one Bruce Wayne Batman, and he has an alternative persona that is the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh.
So, but he doesn't like gain powers or anything though, right? So like
No.
he just is Batman.
He just acts different and wears a purple suit.
and hopefully doesn't jump off of buildings and try to fly.
No.
Like, okay.
No.
Okay, because it's like not that far off from the Hulk to be like, you're in a lot of trouble, and then you become someone else.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
So,
you wouldn't
okay.
like him when he's angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I tried to come up with inspirations, like I always do, for the character, and there's not. It's like it's Batman, but what if he was Superman? I do think this is the first time we're sort of encountering the space age while we're talking about this podcast. Are you familiar with the space age?
Just like the human space age of very familiar.
If you had to like chat GPT, you are chat GPT, Brian. What is the space age? Can you tell our audience?
Well, let me think of something that sounds like a correct answer first. The space age, I would say, is the point at which we as humans started to actively explore space through satellites and then through like passenger travel or whatever, because it was animals and then it was people, and then that turned into the space race, and then the race to the moon.
Yeah. And importantly, like that's like the sort of like high level societal, like cultural like human race stuff that was happening that punctuates everything. But there's actually like a lot of like pop culture that falls out of that, right? So you're absolutely right. In October of 1957, the USSR launches Sputnik 1. In February of 1958, this issue of Batman comes out. So just a few months later. Yeah. The U.S. launches Explorer 1, which was our satellite, in February of 1958. So the same month that the U.S. is launching its Me Too rocket, with its satellite on it, this is coming out. So people like very much, it's all over the news, right? It's all over, everyone's consciousness is like, oh man, we're going to figure out space travel. Like we're trying to do that. Kennedy says we're going to the moon in 1961. So that doesn't happen for 3 years. The Cadillac, are you the Coupe de Ville? Are you familiar with that car?
I would need to see a picture to be reminded, but yes, I know. I know the name.
Sure, 1958 Cadillac Coupe de Ville that shows up this year for the first time.
Oh yeah, classic.
Yeah,
it's got the mega fins too.
It's got the fins on the back. Yeah. Everything at this point starts to become a little spacey, and I think at first in earnest, right? They're like, oh man, space is the future. And we're gonna, our cars are gonna look like rocket ships. Our restaurants are gonna look like rocket ships. Our casinos are gonna look like rocket ships. Our hotels are gonna look like rocket ships, right? They start leaning into this like sort of mid-century modern aesthetic where there's like satellites and fins and bottlenoses all over everything. And I think very quickly. At first, this is very earnest, and I think very quickly it becomes a parody of itself. Like the Jetsons, right? They show up in 1962, right? So they're poking fun at themselves almost immediately after it. And I think this is sort of like very much of that moment, in the same way that the Batman serial we watched is part of the Atomic Age, right? Where there's a lot of anxiety about the nuclear bomb. There's a lot of anxiety about radiation and radium, and what does that mean for society? The exact same social moment, cultural moment is happening around space. But in a way, it's less worried, it's less anxious, and more hopeful and more excited. And people are enamored with the magnitude of what's happening here. They're celebrating, they're enjoying. Like when we think about some of the things that are happening, like AI, right? Yeah. People are a little unsure. We're a little uneasy. We're a little anxious about it. You think about like the World Wide Web in the 90s, people were pretty stoked on that, right? Yeah. Like there's certain flashpoints or touchstones that are met with fear and discomfort, and there's others that are met with like excitement. And this is very much one of the ones that is met with excitement. And I think if you had to pinpoint one thing that inspires or births the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh, it's that like hopeful, excited. It's not the birth of sci-fi. Like World of Worlds is written in like 1910, right? But it's when we get excited about it. And all of a sudden we think, oh, sci-fi is going to be a thing that we're actually going to do.
Yeah. In our lifetime, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's I've had that thought a bunch of times recently about it. What a trip it must have been for
Yeah.
like my great grandpa or something like
Sure.
someone who was born when they like didn't have cars and
Yeah.
to die once they've like been to the moon,
Yeah.
and like what that is for like a lifetime to see the change to.
Mm.
And like I think about my dad as well, like he was born
Mhm.
in the 50s, you
Yeah.
know, and in his lifetime he went from like everything is paper and pencil and pen and
Mhm.
like manual calculations and stuff to now nothing is paper and pencil. Like
Yeah.
like I think about what work used to be like, where you would like make a decision, you'd write something down, and you'd put it in an envelope, and then
Yeah.
you would send it and wait for
Yeah.
days until
Yeah.
it comes back, you know. And now it's like moments. It's
Sure.
just instant, you know. And so what a paradigm shift
Yeah.
that is, and how like once you realize like, oh, we are like right on the edge of like doing some stuff,
Yeah.
and the opportunities that creates in terms of like tools and
Yeah.
making life easier and productivity and
Mhm.
exploration and stuff like that, like space, the final frontier, right? It's
Yeah.
like it's the exploration that is so
Totally.
exciting, right?
I think that optimism is infectious. There's no way that it's
Hmm.
not, right? And I think there's definitely like a retro future that we have a lot of nostalgia for. You know, the Fantastic Four movie that's coming out. If you've seen the trailers, like it's very much like slotted into the space age. It's like all
Mm,
about the nostalgia for that moment. And when you step into Tomorrowland at Disneyland,
yeah,
right? They built it during the space age
yeah.
to be, you know, about the future,
Hmm.
and it's frozen in amber, and now it's a retro future. It's the future we thought we were just about ready to have that never came.
Yeah,
And distilled in that and captured in that, bottled in that lightning in the bottle is that optimism, right? And it's kind of cool. It's kind of fun.
oh,
You
for sure.
gotta enjoy it on some level.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that's what happens to us, is that
Sure.
sometime in the future we realize that the future we thought we were headed to didn't happen.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I think in some ways there's I it, we're not quite there yet, but I
Hmm.
do think that there is what I was talking about earlier with the World Wide Web in the 90s. I think we're starting to maybe have a little bit of retro nostalgia about that moment. Um, like if you think of the Matrix,
Hmm.
right? Where
Yes.
where there was that it wasn't optimistic, but there was this view of a future that was just around the corner where everything was about to change, but like most stuff was still running on like CRTs.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't know, people buy CRTs to play retro video games on them. And like that's a thing. Like people there are whole channels like lazy game reviews on YouTube or whatever where they've got like, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions of subscribers, and all they do is like unbox 486s and like play DOS games and stuff like that, right? And like I think I'd like to think that there will be certain moments that at the time you don't view as like having a valence or having a vibe, that when you start to look back at them you're like, oh yeah, that was a moment, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully one we can remember positively.
Yeah. I mean, I would say like strongly recommend.
Mm.
CNN did this docu-series about each of the decades, the 60s, 70s,
Oh
80s,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
90s, thousands.
Yeah.
Really interesting, really good
Mm.
to go back and like see what was in the culture, in the atmosphere at the
Mm.
time. What were the big deals then that many have kind of been forgotten about,
Yeah.
or they changed to be something else over time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that whole concept is really interesting, especially when they start getting into like the first episode of each series, I think, is television. Like this
Mm,
is what
mm,
was
mm.
on TV and what was
Yeah.
big at the time. The like I think I Love Lucy was like the first TV show that had them sleep in the same bed. And that was like a big deal,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And how it's changed over time, and
Mhm.
like the what's that family? The
Brady Bunch.
moving on up. Yeah, so the Jeffersons,
Yeah.
they were a black family.
Yeah.
So it was like a TV show about a black family,
Yeah.
and they were wealthy, which
Yeah.
that was the first,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Different way of like
Uh,
viewing that cultural lens, right? For the
yeah,
first time on TV.
and how society has been changing and so
Mhm,
on. It's
mhm,
just,
mhm,
I don't know, going back and seeing that kind of stuff is really fascinating.
mhm.
Also, it makes me think how kind of strange it is that before that, there's nothing like this because they didn't like have cameras.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Like there's no way to like really experience that except like narrated voiceovers with like pictures fading across the screen or whatever.
Yeah, I think to some degree that's what we've been trying to do on Bat Lessons is like put ourselves in moments that are harder to have a nostalgia for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what was it like in the 1800s, late 1800s?
Yeah.
What was it like in the early 1900s? What was it like,
Yeah.
You can't just like watch a sitcom to see what it was like,
Yeah.
Or at least what we felt like it was like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's super interesting to like step back in time and not just say like, what do I think about this comic, but like, what did they think about the comic at the time?
Totally.
Why did it exist? Why was it interesting, etc. And that's one of the things about like you were saying that patina on the Golden Age. That I thought was really interesting is also how so much of it was. We've said this a bunch of times, but how so much of it was expected to be trash, like not last, like go to the trash can.
And now people revere it. Yeah.
And yeah, now it's saved and
how could you have predicted that? You can't, right?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like if you go back in your Facebook to when you were in high school and it's like right, like what is it like for Shelley Moldov to go look at like some of the Golden Age stuff and be like, oh man, I didn't know what I was doing back then.
Sure, yeah. And what's crazy, right, is that like to me, we were talking about that you bringing up viewing backwards and like looking back at like what comics were like, what was the moment like. What's crazy to me is that there's a 50-year gap, right? Batman of Zur-En-Arrh shows up in 1958, doesn't show up again until 2006. Grant Morrison is like bringing it to relevance. 2006, Brian, was 20 years ago, right?
I know.
Right? To me, that's very modern. Like, oh,
yes.
Now there's this new thing, right? It's not new at all, right? It's so not new that it's like in video games and in TV shows and like other writers have done things about it now, and it's like, and so it's we are approaching a point. There will be a day when Zur-En-Arrh has been around as something that writers play with longer than it wasn't.
Yes.
Right? We're not there
totally.
yet, but it's going to happen. Because time, she keeps marching. I think that's one of the cool things about like looking at something that has such a rich and long history like Batman is that it is a tool. It is a lens through which you can look at those periods of time and you can look back and you can say, what was the 1950s like through the lens of someone in 2005? What was 2005 like through the lens of someone today? What was,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to your point, Shelley Moldoff, what was he thinking about the 40s when he was writing stuff in the 50s,
Hey, Bat fam. Hope you like the show. Please like and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. Stickers. We got them. Great way to support the show. They're $5, and you can find a link in the description and on batlessons.com. To keep on rolling, watch this video.